Well, I just want to welcome everybody to the February CalHort meeting. We did have a speaker for this month. Bart, are we going to be able to reschedule?
Yeah.
Okay, so this month we're doing plant share, which I've had a lot of nice contributions. Thank you everybody for contributing. I came across this quote that I thought was very apropos, good for our interests here and how we feel about being outdoors and enjoying the sunshine and seeing plants grow. Thanks everybody for contributing. We have Kristen, Saxon, who won't be here tonight, but we have a surprise from Saxon. Beryl, Patricia, Judy, Sean, Mark, Sal, myself, and Bart. And I hope everybody joins in the conversation. So if you have anything to say, by all means, jump in. And we're going to start with Beryl.
Hi.
So you want to tell us about your amazing picture there?
The flowers are more dense now than they were when I took the picture. I actually like it better, less dense. I don't really like the look when it's like solid, pink flower. I like seeing the leaves also.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so you have the names there. So
I love your flamingo globe Lachenalia. That is just gorgeous with the contrast. Well, all those plants in front of that are nicely contrasted.
Yeah, I actually like the leaves even better than the flowers.
Well, it gets a dark, bronzy maroon color leaves later in the summer, does it not?
Oh, you're talking about the Loropetalum?
Yeah.
The leaves don't change color much, actually.
Oh, they don't get the bronzy color?
They're already bronzy.
At least plenty
They're
of purple.
all the time.
There's one though that's red blooming that I just planted. I have this one which I limbed up so that it's a tree as opposed to a shrub. But the one that's the leaves are nearly black and the flowers are red. And I had tried to do it in a pot, but eventually it moved it in the ground, and then the drought then kind of did it in. So I bought another one, but I'll show it to you guys next week. Next month.
And
Ellen,
actually, I
go
think
ahead.
that euphorbia is glacier.
Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I like that as juxtaposed against the Loropetalum. It's surreal almost.
Yeah, really pop.
Nice to have all that contrast there. That makes everything, like I said, pop.
Yeah. Ooh.
Hey, Sean.
So I've talked about my Drimia maritma in the past. I thought it was kind of strange what happened this year. The picture on the left is what it normally would look like in February. In the upper right-hand side, that's what it looked like in January and into February. And only just in the last week is it looking like the bottom corner. And that's, just less than half the size in length the leaves are. I was really worried about it. For most of the fall, it just had these teeny little green tips poking out of the bulb, and not even all the bulbs. And I kept thinking, did I do something? What's and it was getting all this rain, but it was so bloody cold.
Yeah.
We're up near Pinole now, and so maybe we were a lot colder than we're used to. Well, we in fact were a lot colder than last year, quite a bit colder. But the plants did grow just fine last year, and they had not been, fussed with or anything. So it was just a very strange thing. So I had such a nice flowering last August. I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen this year, but I guess we'll see. I don't know.
When do they normally look like the one down below?
Usually by now they look like the left-hand picture.
Oh, okay.
Quite large, quite big leaves. They make a big show. So
Is this a summer dry bulb?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
a summer dry bulb.
Oh,
And
nice.
in March, the leaves usually start to get a little tired looking, and they start to turn yellow towards the end of March, even depending on the weather. Sometimes I water them a little bit to keep them pumping up the bulb.
I do think the foliage is so much nicer than like Naked Ladies or there
Mhm.
aren't very many that are any nicer than that.
Oh yeah, that's very upright. There, it's kind of, it's got a glaucous sheen
Yep.
to it. It's
Yep.
people when they see it, they're just like, "What is that? Oh my gosh, it's so tall and everything." They're just so surprised by it, and the size of the bulbs. For those of you who don't know, those bulbs, I mean, each one is about the size of a baby's head. I mean, they're really big.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
they sit on the
So
surface.
And they live a long, long, long time. Some of
Except-
mine are blue foliaged and some of them are green foliaged.
oh
All
really?
of mine, you mentioned that yours were kind of up a little bit earlier. Mine never are. Mine, I think, are just maybe beginning to show some green now.
Really?
But then they stay green all the way into probably June, sometimes even July.
Huh.
And when they flower, they're usually very tall, like 5 feet.
Wow.
Are they in the ground?
No, they're in pots.
Huh, interesting.
The
So
other
what-
thing is that I know that they actually grow in heavy soils, and so probably would benefit from some fertilizer if you're not getting them, if they're not looking good. Because I know that I tend to, or I try to keep mine to like 1 or 2 bulbs per, like a pot the size of a 5-gallon can,
Wow.
Uh-huh.
because they are big bulbs.
Football size.
I got mine from Kathy Eccles, and I have them planted all over the yard in the dry areas, obviously clay soils, and they were in, I mean, they're giant already. They've been, I think, already since December.
Huh.
And so I don't think it's about the cold. I kind of think yours are pretty pot bound actually. And that
Yeah,
might
they look
benefit
crowded.
them. Yeah. And then the other thing though that did surprise me is last Thursday, my gardener, it goes around at this time of year to go after all my virus amaryllis, because that's the only way I understand I can control the virus. And he brought me a Drimia, and he said, "Look, Kristen, this has virus." And I didn't know this is in the amaryllis family, but it is.
Hmm.
So that means they're poisonous, which means they're gopher proof and probably deer proof, right?
Yes.
Oh, they're everything proof. This was the source of the original or old time rat poison.
Yes, it
ground
was.
up
Really?
bugs. Yep.
I would believe
Yep.
it.
Have,
So
have any,
anyway, watch for the virus because mine got it. So not the whole yard, but in this one area. So just saying.
Huh.
Well, if you look at the flowering photo, you can see a slope behind it. That's our back slope, and I am planning to get them planted up there. I've been told by my southern France, Italy, and Greek friends that no, keep them pot bound. They do much better if they're pot bound, and so I just stopped worrying about, and they keep. Mine have bifurcated periodically. It's a weird plant. It doesn't produce little bulbils. You see, they're all kind of the same size. Basically, when a bulb gets to be a certain size, it splits in two and becomes 2 bulbs. And if you look closely, if you could look closely at these, maybe in the upper right-hand corner, you can kind of see where 2 bulbs seem to be more connected than the others, and that's where they've split.
so I'm wondering, have any of you guys gotten any seedlings coming up from your Drimias?
No, wish
I've
now.
I've had 1 or 2 over the years, and usually they come up in other pots, not in the
Okay.
ground.
Because I just this year, for the first time, I noticed about 6 feet away from my plants that are rooted through the pots into the ground. They're the foliage is at least 18 inches, 2 feet tall, just full and lush and gorgeous. But there's this seedling, and that's one of the pictures I sent to Ellen. I don't know if you can bring that one up or not.
Which one is
But
it?
the seedling of the Drimia. I said Ergenia.
That's the name I remember, by the way, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm slow to change.
There
Yeah,
it is.
Virginia is what they've been known as for years and years and years.
Is that it?
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So that
that
is
looks-
about 6 inches tall.
And that rooted in the
Wow.
ground?
I'm pretty sure it's a seedling because it's about 6 feet away from the plants.
And so this is your ground that has other interesting stuff in it too, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
That's so cool. I've
Yeah.
never had a seedling. I could never find any seed. I've tried to save seed for the seed exchange. And I have heard from some botanists that they believe it's a self-sterile plant.
Oh.
That, so you really, because all mine are from the same bulb. And it came from, they originally came from somebody in San Jose who donated them to our Mediterranean Garden Society group.
Yeah.
I mean, decades ago. And he apparently had so many, they were making it hard for him to, they were growing in between 2 driveways, and he couldn't drive his car up his driveway anymore because the bulbs had like just continued to grow and bifurcate and were all over one side of the driveway. So he was really happy that some of our members dug them all up and distributed them to various people. He
Cool.
kept calling them the Mediterranean onions, and we're like, no, I hope you're not eating them, because they're very poisonous.
Yes, but you know that onions are in the Amaryllidaceae, right?
Yes.
Nancy,
So-
more than one seedling coming up, or was that just one oddball?
Just the one all by itself.
Okay.
But I'll watch it, see what happens.
Yeah, and that mine sets seed every year. The seed is black and somewhat papery, like many amaryllids are. And that, like I said, I've had several seedlings over the years. But also, like I mentioned, I do have both the blue-gray leaf form and the plain green form.
Are they in the seed exchange, Bart?
Yeah.
No, I didn't think anyone was that interested.
Oh,
They-
my.
They do take a while to get to size. From the looks of Nancy's, I would guess hers has got to be about 3 years old at least.
And this is the first time I've noticed it.
Yeah, well, a lot of times that is how it goes with some of these things, because first few years they're just very wimpy.
Okay.
So Bart,
Oh.
how many plants do you have from the seeds of the ones with the bluish leaves?
Well, see, I don't sow the seeds. They just kind of float around, and if they come up, they come up. So
Well,
no,
put
I don't have very many. I just have, I think, 3 or 4 pots of them, of the different ones.
I
But
think-
they always set seed every year.
You should put the seeds into the seed exchange next year.
All right, I'll collect them because they're very easy to collect.
Yay.
It sounds like we all would love to have some blue-leaved
Yeah.
plants, Bart.
Well, but since I have both, and apparently they don't, or they need to cross, who knows what you'll get.
It might be something even more magnificent.
I would doubt that.
Hope springs eternal, Bart.
Yeah, well, this is always true with seedlings.
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Okay, Sean, Clyclamen and Arum.
So this is sort of in keeping with how certain things have been kind of stunted this year when they were fine last year. This is an old cyclamen that was in our last garden. It was in the corner. the way back corner that I couldn't even get to. There were so many overgrown shrubs and such. And I noticed the pink flowers a couple of years, and I finally, when I was able to get back there, I dug the thing up, and the bulb was huge. It was like 8 inches
Cool.
across.
Oh, wow.
And I've been growing it ever since, and it would always put on these really beautiful big leaves and lots of flowers. And this year it looks like it suddenly decided to be a miniature. Just teeny tiny leaves, again about a quarter of the size. And it's been sort of befuddling to me. And the same thing happened to my Arum pictum, which last winter, the leaves were just amazing. They were big, lush, like calla lily sized leaves, and just gorgeous. And in the upper right-hand corner, there are these puny little sad looking things right now. I was just out watering today, and it looks like maybe it's putting on a few more leaves, and they might be a little bit bigger, but
Is it blooming
it
right now?
just seemed like the cold kept everything sort of stunted. Things were sort of in suspended animation for a long time for us.
That's quite an Arum flower, though. I thought that was the
Yeah.
black, what used to be called the black calla lily in my younger days. I think they're a Drancunculus, though.
There
I
is a
have-
black calla lily that is an Arum. That's Arum palestinum, and that blooms in spring. Arum pictum, when the leaves emerge in the fall, the flower emerges. So it's the only Arum that blooms in the fall.
Well, that's
And-
magnificent black.
And I've always wanted to have it, and it was just about 5 or 6 years ago that somebody I had communicated with maybe a decade earlier finally said, "Did I ever send you any of those bulbs?" And he's up in
that I don't think that's Arum pictum. I have that same thing, and it's not pictum. It's I've never been able to put a proper name on it. There are several other names that have been put on it, but every one I look into, it can't be it. So,
well, there's a lot of
pictum-
Italicum forms that are called, Italicum pictum, and
Yes.
pictum this and pictum that, and that's
Yes.
creating a lot of confusion. This is actually the species called pictum, and I have it from the foremost world authority on Arum species, Peter Boyle, that this is indeed Arum pictum. So you can take it up with him if you want. And it's so completely indisputable because it's the only Arum that blooms in the fall. I know they grow these in England outdoors. They come from Corsica, and that's very Mediterranean, but they seem to, there's a bunch of enthusiasts in the UK that they're probably protecting them somewhat, but they are growing them outdoors. And they seem to do okay, but
Are they
Well-
pollinated?
yeah, fly pollinated. That's why there's the little fly there waiting for his.
I was wondering if you paid him
Yeah.
anything to sit there for your picture.
Yeah,
Well,
a lot of
apparently
patience.
apparently sometimes Plant Delights has it, but it's not in stock right now.
and it's that one, and it's not the Arum italicum pictum.
This one is called Arum pictum Fall Flowering Alum. It's an archive page, so maybe they don't do it anymore.
Yeah, well, because the italicums also flower in the fall. Bright
Do?
red berries.
No, they
No, they flower maybe in the winter time. They don't flower in the fall.
No,
But-
no, I have a lot of that one, and that's everywhere.
Yeah, it's a weed.
Yeah, so this is not Italicum.
Huh. Well, yeah, because I have one. Well, I'll have to find photos of it because it is black also. It looks a bit different than yours because it doesn't sort of get wider at the base like yours does. It's just the same size all the way down, but it's black, and has calla-like leaves, and it usually is about a foot tall.
Yeah, I have Arum palestinum. That sounds like what you're describing. I've been growing that for 45 years.
Oh yeah,
and
well that Palestinum naturalizes. I've seen it around Capitola,
yeah,
starting in the 60s. No, it's not that. This is much, much smaller. This, like I said, the whole plant is like a foot tall.
I have noticed with the pictum here that the flower basically sits on the ground. It never really forms a stem. It just kind of sits there down at the soil surface. And the leaves, you know, have stems around it. And so eventually that's kind of covered up by the leaves pretty quickly. But that seems to be a characteristic of this species. And when it's growing in the fall, you can tell pretty clearly which shoot is going to be a flower and which shoot is just going to be a leaf, because it's the flower that's coming first. So it's very unique that way. And there are a few other arums that are kind of blackish, purplish in their floral, their spathe, but in general, I've read Peter Boyle's book on all the arums and such, and they all have more of a stem to them. And they all flower from at least winter through spring, not first thing in fall. So, and they make a big deal about that in several authoritative descriptions of this bulb. So again, you can
Okay,
talk to
did you
Peter
find
Boyle
seed,
about it if you want.
Bart?
I'm just going by what he says.
Bart, maybe you can find some old pictures that we can do in next month's forum.
Yeah, I will.
Do you ever get seed on yours, Sean?
Not yet. It seems to be, again, a single clone. I haven't noticed it having any inclination to produce seed. There's a lot of different forms of this plant. A number of them have, and the most desirable ones have interesting veining, lighter colored veins, which is probably where the confusion between this plant and Italicum pictum come in. You can see the veins are kind of light colored on mine, but I'm talking like really, really very distinctly, you know, light green or silvery white, and not in the modelly pattern that the Italicum forms have, but in this nice sort of stripy pattern. There are some forms with flowers that are green. The spathe is green and a black spadix.
Oh, wow.
Fingery thing. And then there are even forms where the spathe is green, a chartreuse green, and the spadix is yellow. So there's all this very enthusiastic group of people who fawn over this plant and trade forms around, mostly in the UK. And they just go, yeah, it's really funny to read forums devoted to this. They just really, you could just see them drooling all over their keyboards. They get so excited about this plant.
Yeah, there
So
are a lot of tinier aeroids. I mean, the other ones that there are devoted collector groups are of the biarums, which are really small, and that, you know, a 4 or 5 inch pot is big enough for them for many years, and they flower in the fall also, and are also dark, but the leaves are tiny. I mean, they're you can have a whole collection of them on a single table.
yeah, and they sit low down on the ground too. They don't really grow a stem. So they're similar in that. And in fact, I've had people try to tell me that this is a biarum. It's always so interesting to me how many gardeners are willing to argue about things. So this is a form of, many of you know, I've been sort of researching gray leaf centaureas for many years now. And I don't quite know why I went down that rabbit hole, but I did. And I had this plant that I had found locally called Centaurea silver lace. And I got it at Oh, that nursery in Oakland next to the Rose Garden, that Ace Garden Center on Grand Avenue. And I asked them, where did you get it from? And what, and I asked all around, I did all this research. Nobody could figure out where this thing came from. And it seemed to grow smaller than the giant gray leaf thing that everybody calls Centaurea gymnocarpa, which that is not the right name for it. I've had it DNA tested and it's not the right name. It's a hybrid. But anyway, so this silver lace one grew for me for a while, and it was kind of a nice thing, but it was a little weak. And it eventually petered out, but before it did that, it produced, I looked for seed rigorously. Now, it could be that the birds always beat me to it. I tried to keep them covered and stuff, but the birds love the seeds of these Centaureas. But somehow, 3 seedlings popped up in a nearby pot, and I coddled them, and one of them survived, and I've been babying it ever since. And it grew into this very nice plant. It's much smaller than the others, which is great in my opinion, because the giant one that you see everywhere, just you got to cut it down to keep it from taking over the whole neighborhood. It does produce the bachelor button flowers, but not abundantly. The leaves they look different to me now. I've been looking at these plants for so long. I can see the differences. So I'm trying to keep it going, and I've just dispersed it a little bit. Janet Sluice took one to evaluate for the sunset, plant stuff, and I never heard back from her, so I guess it didn't cut her muster. Deborah Lindsay, who's sometimes on these meetings, she has one. I think she lives in the Oakland Hills. And my friend in Italy has one, who I sent via Deborah when she was traveling to a garden in Ischia, Lady Susanna's garden. So this past winter, it really started to look sad. I covered it a few times, and the leaves got kind of all weird looking. And it was looking so good. So that's the picture on the lower left. It has since perked up, and it's starting to grow more vigorously. And the leaves, the same leaves that looked so peaked, have come to look much better. So I'm happy about that. And it just is staying nicely in this pot. I have some cuttings. A squirrel knocked a branch off, and I ended up rooting those to get a few cuttings. So now I've got a few more plants that I'll probably try on our hillside. But I mostly like it having it so close where I can look at it. So I called it Centaurea Filigrana d'Argento, which basically means silver filigree. As far as I know, I'm the only one, other than the people I mentioned, who has it. And I'm not sure who's interested. It's something that I've spent a lot of time on, and I think they're interesting and worthwhile plants, but most people just say, oh yeah, that plant's everywhere. There's no big deal about that.
It's a nicely shaped plant, nice compact and nice shape.
Yeah, I think the compact would be nice, but people have been confusing this plant for the last 50 years with Senechios and the Centaurea regusina, which has the yellow flower, which is now just starting to enjoy a return to the trade, and some other dusty millers. I mean, it's a gray leaf plant, they're all the same. So.
Sean, how did you get that name? I mean, originally you thought it was a seedling from the silver lace?
It was a seedling from silver lace, and I had silver lace tested and DNA tested, and it showed up as having a seed parent, at least, of the true Centaurea gymnocarpa. which is what I was sort of trying to track down, is like, does that plant even exist in California? And it did, in the form of this hybrid. The big giant plant that is so common and so easy to grow and never produces seed, it has all the markings of a hybrid, a sterile hybrid. Its last seed parent was Centaurea Filigrana, which comes from southern Italy, around the Bay of Naples. Centaurea gymnocarpa comes from a single island off the coast of Tuscany, Purpurea, not Capri, which is in the Bay of Naples. Again, more confusion, but Purpurea. And they're very proud of that endemic plant. And it's you know, on the rare plant list. It's, you know, you can't touch them on this tiny island. You know, they're very endangered. And I've often thought, well, this is so weird that this plant that's in everybody's garden is also the plant that's highly endangered and on this tiny island. And then when I really became convinced that there was a confusion over the names, you know, I've been thinking, well, I hope they don't bring some of these other Centaureas to the island to muddy the gene pool and stuff like that. So I don't know, because I did see these various same hybrid plants in Italy and in France and in Spain. You know, they're so easy to pass around, and they're all being passed around under names that are not appropriate, not even close sometimes to any of the gray leaf Centaureas. So it's always a confused mess, and I don't know what to do about it.
So where
But
did this name come from? The filigrana,
Filigrana. Oh, I made it up, dear. I just made it up. I wanted it to be an Italian name. And I asked my friend Alessandra Vinciguerra, who runs Lady Susanna's Garden, La Mortella in Ischia. I said, what do you think? Does this sound right to you? And she just said, oh, it's wonderful. It's so poetic. I love it. So she agreed that we call it that because she already had a piece of the plant by then. And Lady Susanna admired these gray leaf plants. When we stayed with her back in 2000, she had a little cutting of the Centaurea cineraria that she had sequestered into her coat pocket from Capri when she visited the famous, you know, that famous building way up on top of the rock there. It's the road up to that is full of that gray leaf plant. She was coddling it and trying to get it to grow. And so I mentioned the work I was doing, and oh, I'd love to see what what you come up with and stuff. So she has since passed away, but Alessandra was very happy to get a plant of this to plant in the garden. And maybe the next time I go there, I'll be able to see it growing there.
Sean, I bought a gymnocarpa, and it is this as a gymnocarpa, and it got huge and much bigger than I wanted. And then last year, I have my wash line near it, and there's bricks as the base around the wash line. And I am not good about maintaining my dry area. It bloomed and it's seeded, and my birds are very satisfied and didn't eat all the seeds, and they germinated in the bricks, and I've been giving them away. All these seedlings have come up, and I now have 5 again that have come up. And I've put some in a neighbor's yard simply because I love this plant, because it does grow dry, especially in our heat. It in full sun. It just never shows any stress. I think it's a great garden plant for dry growing areas. But I just wanted to share with you that gymnocarpa did in fact, I mean, I must have pulled already 20 seedlings off of it.
So the plant, I know for a fact that I was growing the actual gymnocarpa for a while.
Right, and
And
I got yours that you brought to Cal Hort, but the one that seeded out is the one that I bought retail somewhere. I don't remember where. It's not from you.
you're sure that that's the one? Because
Yes.
the one, the gymnocarpet that I got from a botanist who has studied this group of plants and is probably one of the authorities on this group of plants, she sent me seed, and it was indeed a very vigorous plant. And the birds loved it better than any of the others, in fact. And so I had to really fight to get some seed. And I did have some seed for a while. And I just had too many gray leaf plants after a while. And I did not renew that plant. So I'm sure you got one of the real gymnocarpas
Yeah, but this is
into your garden. And now maybe it's crossing with some of the other forms, but who knows?
Well,
I'd have to come and look at it. I can
Folly.
sort of tell by looking at the foliage, but I can definitely tell by looking at the flowers, because there are some very particular kinds of little ciliate bracts that are the main differentiation that botanists use to determine a species in this group. It's really strange that it comes down to these funny little floral bracts, because otherwise they look so strikingly the same. So my big Echeverias, I was worried about, as it was so cold. Each of these is 8 to 10 inches across. These are the largest Echeverias we have, but they're all doing great. And they're looking really good right now. And some of them are starting to come into bloom. In spite of the cold, they're doing, and in spite of my worrying, they're doing quite well.
They turn a little bit of color, giving a little color for you.
Yeah, yeah. These are all kind of hybrids of agavoides and colorata. I have this rosemary that I've had. I bought this maybe 20, 30 years ago from Magic Gardens, and Aaron called it Rosmarinus officinalis alba, and that's it. And I asked him for more information, and he said, well, it's the white form. And I have since found many, many other white forms, but this one I've always called shaggy white because the leaves stick out and kind of curve back. And it creates a very different texture than the other rosemaries, which usually are more clasping. And it was coming into bloom right now, and it's always a pleasant thing to see. It gets, when it's really cold, the flowers get a little bit of blue tint. And if it's really hot, they also get a little blue tint. But otherwise, they stay pretty creamy white.
Is it a trailer or kind of a little low growing upright, or?
It's a medium upright. It's not trailing at all.
Oh, okay.
No, it's kind of an upright bush. And then I have this Artemisia. I don't know what to call it. It's so different from anything. Some of my European landscape designer friends they say, oh, that's angel. I said, well, could you tell me any more than that? Well, no, we just call it angel. And it's the leaves are very mirrory, very shiny, and they're kind of limp. And it's sort of a very Dr. Seussy looking in its form.
Is that the same plant with the two different textures? One looks quite.
One's very close to my camera phone and the others are in the background. It tends to make these long, sort of gangly stems. It's kind of hard to keep into a tidy shape. And if they get too long, they flop over and such. So I've been, again, trying to figure out where to place it in the new garden. It tends to go all limp if it gets too dry, but it doesn't like being too wet either. So I'm still trying to figure out, that's another reason I'd like to know its identity. Maybe that would help me, figure out what does it need.
Anybody have any ideas on identity for Sean?
I wonder if it might be a Hawaiian species or another, Pacific Island species, because I know there are some Artemisias out there. It
Not
does
like
look very exotic.
moisture, a lot of moisture, but it drains like easily.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of dry parts of Hawaii that, have
Mm.
very xeric plants, as you go up in elevation and stuff. But yeah, I don't know enough about them.
Okay.
So anyway, it's a fun, interesting plant, and it's rarely seen. I think I got a cutting from somebody on Martin Luther King Jr. Way. I happened to be driving by and stopped, and this fellow was getting in a car, and I said, "Is that your plant?" And he says, "Oh, it was my girlfriend's. I don't know what it is." "Sure, take a cutting."
Oh, nice. No name, but nice.
Yeah.
I love that Teucrium there.
Yes, this is one of our favorite plants. Our friend in the south of France, the nurseryman Olivier Philippe, is crazy for Teucriums, and he's collected just so many of them all around the Mediterranean. And this is among his favorites. And the flowers look a little yellower than they do in real life. They're more greenish yellow, which we like, the chartreusey color. And the little furry leaves are just nice. So Deborah sort of taken ownership of this guy. She chose the pot, which was a gift from a friend of hers, and it has a pride of place at the moment. So it was blooming very nicely.
How big is that? You can't really tell.
It's it's just a couple of inches tall, the plant. The pot is maybe, let's see, 6-7 inches across.
Oh, okay. Tiny.
It's a really tiny little rock garden plant.
Sean, how long have you had this particular plant?
Well, we've had it a long time. It was in our last garden, which we moved a year and a half ago, and it took a beating because it was in this sort of rock garden area, and it had sent roots rather deeply around. And it's made up of these teeny little stems. So it took kind of a beating, and so it looked like crap for a while. And just in the last 6-8 months, it's really started to come into its own again. So
Have you ever seen it grown? I mean, in its native place or grown in the ground?
Yes, we did see it. We did see it growing, and it likes slopes. It likes rocky areas, and a lot of these southern France and Mediterranean landscapes are very stony and lots of limestone, and it seems like an impossible place to grow, but these plants love it. So
how wide would it get in those native conditions?
I never saw it, spreading a great deal. They always seem to be, a single plant that was maybe 10 inches across and 2 inches high.
It's a beauty.
Yeah, it's a favorite. And this is the Crassula ovata, pink beauty, which I brought in before, and Sedum confusum, which is doing really, really well this year. In spite of getting knocked around during the move, I just kept throwing all the broken pieces into one big pot, and it grew really well, and it's been getting very pink tinted, which is the first time it's ever done that for us, again in response to the cold. And the pink beauty jade plant above also has a much more intense pink this year because of the cold.
Are you in a colder area than you were in your former house, or not necessarily?
It is colder, but it's been a cold winter, don't you think? I mean,
Yes.
everybody I know has been complaining about how cold it is. But
cold, but it's every night.
Yeah, I still covered a few plants tonight, but just in case. But yes, we are, as you get up to Richmond and you kind of turn that corner, we're almost to pinole. And there's, you know, that geographic formation that comes down, heading right to pointing right at the Richmond Bridge, seems to change the weather significantly. And so we can get colder, and we also can be quite a lot warmer than Berkeley was in the summertime. So it's not like radically different. It's not like being up in Sonoma or out in Brentwood. But it's a significant enough. And we're in this, I don't know, we're kind of in this little veil that I think funnels cold air from higher areas. We're trying to understand our new place still, and where the sun comes up and all that stuff. So it's interesting.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. I'm sorry we ended up spending so much time on
We had things to talk about for sure. Patricia sent this to me asking what it was, and I was thinking it might be like a lipstick plant or something. She thought it might have been a Hoya. Does anybody have any thoughts on what this might be? We can report back to her.
I think I thought Apicia or lipstick plant or something like that.
It's not an Apicia for sure.
No.
No.
I don't know that one.
I don't even know that it's even an Escianthus.
Yeah, I don't think it's a Gesneriad at all.
What about one of those Hoyas with the small leaves? Those trailing ones?
Doesn't look like any Hoya I've ever seen.
I mean, most of them are really waxy, but there is those delicate ones. No other suggestions, thoughts?
Is that a new branch coming up out of the soil, the yellow thing?
I don't think so. I think that must be something else coming up right here. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something else coming up, but I'm not positive.
There is a tiny flower on the ground.
She's saying it had sent up numerous tiny sprouts that all die.
Yeah, but that's a flower.
But that might have come from something above it too. I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to ask her.
Actually, I think that might be another shoot.
Here?
Just like that, like the one in the front. And that's just too shaded and it's white. I don't think that's a flower.
Oh, aren't stamens?
No, I don't think so. I think those are just more bract-like leaves, just like on this yellow-green part.
Okay. Okay, so she'll have to find its median where it's thriving, because evidently it was doing pretty well before, but she said it never flowered before her. And I don't think she must have seen it in flower either. So, okay. Well, thank you for the input.
Yeah, well, and with that sort of ciliate margin, I doubt if it's a Hoya.
Okay. Well, it's Lachenalia time. It's Miss
Woo! Love the Lachenalias.
Judy.
I don't see her on here. Is she on here? Oh, no. Well, as you all know, she likes this grow little bulbs. And so these are what evidently are blooming in her garden right now.
Amazing
Nice.
color.
I know.
That quadricolor is surreal.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I have one of those blooming. I wanted her to be on here so I could ask her if I could grow it in the garden.
Oh, that red one?
The middle one there, yeah.
I've grown them for a while in the garden, but it eventually died out. I don't think they like clay soils.
No, I think,
Rocky.
yeah, and you might also just get a little bit too cold for them in
No.
Danville.
Oh.
No, I think it bloomed, and I maybe it wasn't getting enough drainage. Who knows? I've given up on them. I had it going for about 4 or 5 years though, and it was colder then than it is now.
And I mean, I've grown that one for a number of years and have several big pots of it.
In
And
the
I
ground?
have,
Oh, in the pots.
no, here in Point Richmond. And then I had it and the bulbifera in my front yard in Upland where they naturalized. But that that was very sandy loam and very, very, very well drained. And
Yeah,
then with
drainage,
that,
drainage.
well, and I didn't water at all in the summer at all. My front yard, I never watered. But that Lachenalia splendida, I had gotten one of those from that Judy had propagated and put in one of our plant sales last year.
Huh.
And mine is doing really well, but it's much, much more compact than that flowering stem. I almost sent it in to you, Ellen, for tonight, but I figured Judy would have it already. So I didn't send any Lachenalias.
Gotcha. Well, maybe hers, I know she has a big redwood tree, so it might be growing in more shade perhaps.
Yeah, because mine's in full sun and it's gorgeous, but very dense.
Send it in next month. We'll want to see it.
Yeah, and then I also have Reflexa. Reflexa tends to seed around.
Does it get
That's
any
nice.
taller than that, or is that it?
Sometimes they get a little bit taller, but not much. I mean, you can see like that little tiny one is already flowering. They
Yeah.
flower very young, and then my impression is that once they get pretty big, they're getting toward the end, whereas a lot of the other ones just get big and stay big.
I always thought the only one worth growing was the turquoise flowered one myself.
Viridifolia.
Oh, I loved that one.
Yeah, I love
That
that
is
one
a
too.
nice
Just
one.
look behind Mary right at the moment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there are so many of them. Another really nice one is Trichophila. Has little tiny leaves that are hairy and then sort of a yellowish flower that's only on the bottom, like half of the stem, and the top half of the stem is white. And then the buds don't open, it's just white.
Say the species name again, please.
Trichophila, Trichophila. It's
you.
got small, almost heart-shaped leaves that are very hairy.
Oh, nice.
I have a few of these from Judy as well. And one thing I like about the Reflexa is it's the leaf, the foliage is so different than most of them. It almost makes me think of that albifloss bulb with the white flowers.
Yeah, the Haemanthus.
Yeah, just, Haemanthus, exactly. It's just the way it's kind of broad and the flowers stay real low, just sit on top of those leaves.
Yeah, it is a really good yellow, kind of a yellow green.
Yeah.
Nice.
David Fikes sometimes posts photos on Facebook of the quadricola that he has in a garden, client's garden in Berkeley, and it's just a dense. They've spread a couple of feet, and it's right on the sidewalk in Berkeley, but it's just dense flowers, bulbs that
That'd be
I
fun to go
think,
see.
I don't know, I haven't seen him post them this year, but I think they usually come up every year in that garden.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be
You know,
fun to see.
And that's actually Judy's form of bulbifera is particularly rich. I mean,
So they vary, obviously.
Yeah, the whole floral tube is sort of uniformly red. I mean, and a lot of times they get paler or almost greenish toward where the petals are free.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, very good color form.
Okay, well, thank you, Judy, wherever you are. Here's some other things that she had. She had evidently this Camellia Tochi Demodo, selected by Nucio's Nursery and Demodo family to honor this plant propagator hybridizer, Bay Area nurseryman. Beautiful with the variegation there. Or is that what do they call that? Chimera, yeah.
And chimera is one half one way and one half the other, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a variegation, not a chimera.
Okay, pretty. Big
Yeah.
hair, too. And then she has a picture of, I guess by the windmills by the, in the Golden Gate Park. Evidently this is London Breed's tulip that's been named after her by, sent by a Dutch queen after visiting San Francisco, now in bloom with all the primroses. Okay, so here's the teaser. Sunday, March 19th, save the date. We're gonna have a coffee in the garden at Saxon Holt's garden. He has, I think he said 3 acres in Nevada, and it's nice and mature, and it's obviously gone through a lot of renditions throughout the years, but he's happy with it now, and he's ready to show it off a little bit. So I think it'll be wonderful to go see his garden. Evidently, at some point in the near future, they're going to be downsizing. So I think he's going to give this particular garden up. So he wants to show it off while it's in its prime with all the mature plants and stuff. So anyway, Saxon couldn't make it tonight because he is entertaining guests. So anyway, so this is daffodil, is that a Narcissus Shauna Rose? And this was, these were actually submitted in January. So these are January blooms rather than February blooms. And then he has Camellia Williamson CI Tulip Time, which is a really pretty single one. And then he has this Camellia sasanqua flowering evergreen hedge. And you can see all this little bulbs potted up there.
Right.
And then he has the Arcastaphyllus Sunset, and then he has Arcastaphyllus Monica as well. Bart, you want to say anything about these particular two?
Well, Monica is, well, actually, Sunset is named in honor of Sunset Magazine's 75th anniversary, which was right around 1976. And it's a natural hybrid between hookeri and paparoensis. It's really dense foliage and can be a very effective hedge. Formal hedge or informal hedge. It's not one that's grown for the bark because bark is shaggy, more like the paparoensis parent. The flower clusters on this one tend to be small. Usually they're more white than pink. I mean, a lot of times manzanitas seem to be pinker in cold weather, but that's not always the case. And no one's really sure what it is that does the most rich or causes the real rich pink flowers that some years you see in them. And then Arcastaphyllus Monica is a Louis Edmonds selection from many, many years ago, probably sometime in the early 60s. I forget exactly when. It's it does tend to have smaller individual flowers than most, and that usually it has a very upright, upswept growth habit. That doesn't look quite as much like they usually do in my experience, but I know that it's on a north-facing slope at Saxon, so that may be why. If they're in full sun, they're very, very upright. And usually they are more of a pink flower, but that's looking much more white.
Okay. And then I think there's another, yeah, here's his Monica again. Does that look more cool or
pretty.
not?
Pretty.
Yeah, well, you can see it is, well, it looks like it's arching over to one side, and that left side is going really up. The left side is how I usually see the whole plant, just very, very up. But again, my guess is it's just a peculiarity of its actual site there. It does have gorgeous bark. And it can be almost that red purple that sometimes you see in manzanitas. It's a rare one. You don't see it that often. You can sometimes get it at Cal Flora up in Fulton, just north of Santa Rosa. And that it was one that, I think it was only known from Leo Brewer's garden in Orinda, and that Barbara Coe and Philip McMillan Browse and I went there to see his manzanita collection, and basically brought it back into cultivation via Yerba Buena Nursery, and Saratoga Hort grew a crop or two of them way back when.
And is it no longer available? Well, you said you can find it maybe at Cal Flora.
Yes, it's definitely around a lot more than it was for many, many years. And I know that I had it at Rancho Santa Ana, and we would propagate it down there too.
Why
It's
would you
very
seek that out?
durable.
Was it very durable?
Yeah.
Is that why you would
durable.
seek that out as opposed to another upright version?
It's just a particularly interesting one. I've always found it interesting, mostly because of that upswept growth habit.
Okay.
Nothing else is really quite like it when it's doing that. And that all of the plants at Rancho were doing that. And like I said, a lot of times the flower clusters aren't terribly large, and the individual flowers are tiny, but it's more, a lot of times you grow manzanitas for structure and overall architecture more so than the flowers, although many have great flowers.
Okay, then also Saxon had the Ilex aquifolium argentea marginata, which obviously is the variegated regular English holly. I assume he has a male to go with that, fertilize it. I don't think that one's self-fertile, is it?
You know, I don't understand why everybody says that, because I have just one that I bought at Trader Joe's, you know, one of these little things, and I let it grow, and now I have it in a pot, and it always produces berries.
Well, you may have another one in your neighbor's yard or something too.
Maybe, but
I understood that the English one was not self-fertile.
I mean, I don't get a lot of berries. Maybe in order to get a lot of berries, they have to have another one, but I do not know anyone near me who has it, any kind of holly. And it produces a sporadic, but there are always berries on it every winter.
That's a good thing. Okay, you're up.
All right, so I went through an Erysimum stage, and I actually like the old name Cherryanthus, and they have gotten very promiscuous. I think I've talked about this already. I had David Fikes over last weekend, and he was just, what's the name of that one? And I said, it's just a seedling. They get, I think the color variations were caused by the red and yellow ones that you buy in 6-packs. And then I bought other ones that were yellow and purple in 4-inch pots that were named. I find all of this extremely amusing, actually, that people name them, because as I said, I have so many, and they start blooming about a week ago, and now they're just going to become a huge show in the garden. It's controlled chaos here, so I let them come up where they will.
How long do they bloom for? They bloom all summer?
No, they're not summer bloomers at all, not out here, but they bloom probably through end of April, beginning of May.
Okay, so spring blooming.
Yeah, and then they drop a lot of seed, obviously, and, you know, are having their action going on right now. So, and this is what I'm most proud of. This is Bulbinella, Latifolia subspecies doloritica. I got it at Annie's Annuals. Of course, was told I can't grow it, so I had to try. It was very slow on the mow, let me tell you. I was happy to get 1 or 2 flowers every year. Last year I had 4, and this year, and this is why I think the rain really did something. But look at that, 7 spikes, and I had to get the picture into Ellen. There are a lot more. There's a lot more color on the spikes. If I would love to have this all over the place, let me tell you, because to have this color right now, so big and dramatic, oh my gosh.
I love it.
So,
And it's not available anymore, by the way.
will it spread?
So far, no. I mean, it's not like the yellow one. I have the yellow one everywhere.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's Robusta, but I love that too. So don't want you to think I don't love it. But this one just has so much more of a structure.
How long have
And-
you,
Yeah.
Kristen?
I probably had it already 15 years. It's just
Okay.
languished, but I mean, it always did something, except one year the snails ate one of the flowers off. I was devastated. You know, they just ate the stem underneath it and the whole thing fell off.
Oh,
Sure.
And when you only have one flower, it's devastating. If this plant becomes prevalent, I keep leaving the seed heads on, hoping that, you know, it does not do anything that Robusta does. Robusta, if I leave the seed heads on, I just double my crop next year. But that's a great plant too. I love stuff that grows on its own now. I'm much less interested in structure. I think I offended Dave when he was here because, you know, he loves his structure, but I love controlled chaos. I love the surprises that come up in the garden. I just think it's a wonderful experience. It's like Christmas any time of the year.
Makes it exciting.
Yes, it does.
I think this is a very, very, very rare plant in nature. It may even be near extinction, and that for a while it was around in cultivation, but that generally speaking, they don't persist. So the fact that you've had yours for a long time, Kristen, is really something. You should probably save the seeds and try to actually grow them as something special rather than expecting they're going to just come up, because I'm not aware of anywhere where that's ever happened.
Well, as introverted as I am becoming, I have my own funny little theories. One is, and I talked to Paul Licht, who was the director at Berkeley Botany. I know his field was not botany, but we talked about it. And I said, do you think it's possible that a plant, and there's a name for it, Byron Martin told me the name, but I forget it, that a plant ultimately will adapt without going to seed and changing generations. It just itself will adapt to a new climate. And he told me he thought so. So when I first planted bromeliads in my garden and was told you can't grow that, they have now over the years just become more and more capable of surviving my cold weather, especially the acmeas. They're the most. But the other one, the other bromeliads, I mean, I've got Neurogelias growing and Bilbergias, and all of them, even if they burn now, and many have, because we've had so much frost. I think we must have had 35 or 40 days of frost already. And even though they do that, they're still green on the bottom and still there, and they act like a perennial and come up from that point again. So I don't know that this hasn't adapted. But the other part is, I went on a trip with Panaeoti colitis, who, as you know, was able to get certain plants from South Africa to live in Denver at the Bot Garden outside. And he explained we were on the east side of Lesotho, and the winds come from the Indian Ocean, so they're flowing from east to west. And we were going up this mountain to different places, staying at a lodge. And he said, this is what happened. The winds blew the seeds up, and some of them germinated and could handle the colder weather. And then those progeny moved up. And so he was able to get plants that had been blowing up the mountain from the Indian Ocean's winds. And I wonder too, if the seeds of this would ultimately adapt. I never had paper white narcissus reseeding until I realized that I had so many paper white narcissus in places I never planted them. And now I have to deadhead them. But in the early years, they never reseeded. They just were very well behaved. So I'm shocked that they now are reseeding. And they're just, I bought bags of them at Costco. I mean, it wasn't like I bought something special. I bought narcissus from Costco, and they have adapted and started reseeding. And that's why I do with this. I did harvest seed. I did try to germinate these. When it comes to bulbs, I suck at germinating seeds. I cannot get them to do it. There are very few that do it for me. So if anybody, I can try to gather the seeds of this and maybe somebody else can be luckier with them. I am not.
Kiamara is pretty good at germinating bulbs, so donate some to her.
Judy as well.
Oh, good.
I'll try
Yeah,
to.
well, and that it isn't the cold so much. I mean, I know that Kathy Musial had this down at the Huntington for a while, and it seemed to be happy there. And then it just 1 year, all of them were gone. And that seems to be what it does in the wild also. It's from the Renosterveld, which is more heavier clay soils. So that's not anything it would be specially adapted to. There's something about it that it doesn't want to generally thrive for very long.
Well, I'm pretty sure I had it close to 15 years, if not longer.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly, whatever it is, it's getting it there. And
Yeah.
so, because it is so rare, I mean, and rare in nature, it definitely should get some attention.
Yep.
I would love to share it. I would love to get it out there. Maybe I have something that would grow only in Danville.
I wonder if maybe Kiamara would be willing to visit you when.
Oh, I'll
when-
save the seed and put it in the seed exchange too, and just see if,
Excellent.
and that way, you know, we have a lot of people doing it, which I think is always better as
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But you probably can't grow that outside of Danville.
She's gonna lord it over us.
All the stuff of my experience out here has been, I mean, Dave Fikes was the first one to just tell me, you can't grow that in Danville. And no, Sonny Garcia was another one who did that to me. And I was like, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. It has really, it's almost a blessing they did this, because I just try everything and you never know. I find I can't grow it in one place, but I can grow it in another place.
Okie doke. Let's see what else.
Okay.
Hell strip.
My paper whites have bloomed now from October to now.
Wow.
Granted, they're not the same bulb that's blooming, but where they're watered, they begin to bloom in October. And where they're not watered, they are still blooming today. I've had people who never comment on my flowers or my garden say that the show this year, and I attribute it to the rain, but the show this year, even I will acknowledge, has been spectacular. And I have not, I look at this and I go, I didn't plant one goddamn thing.
Heaven.
Unbelievable. The cleanup is a big hassle, I will tell you that. But I have a gardener now who loves me, and so he does whatever I ask.
That helps.
Yeah. Oxalis purpurea. I had Walker and Brian here last year, and Walker got all excited about the Oxalis purpurea in my succulent bed. I like it in my succulent bed. It went there by itself. Don't misunderstand. But I like it because I don't have to do anything, and it does control the amount of rain that falls on my succulents. I mean, it sucks it up. And that's why Walker was excited, but even I disabused him of the idea that they should plant it all over the Ruth Bancroft garden, because the thing seeds out everywhere in my yard. I did not plant it here. The
Ooh,
seeds came over.
ouch.
I'm not upset. It doesn't hurt the succulents. It helps them actually. But I'm just saying there are pluses and minuses to almost all plants. I will tell you that right now. And I always found it interesting that succulent people are very interested in bulbs, but they do play a role in the rainy season. They control a lot of the water. At any rate, that's my Oxalis, which was originally a white, but that's another thing. It's a white blooming, and most of them in there are white, but the seeds also are purple, and I have the pink form, but that is the least powerful. The white and the purple seem to want to rule.
Does that die down in the summertime when you're not
Yes.
watering?
It completely disappears.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very nice, I am not as anti-oxalis as most people are. I love them, in fact. But it's a great ground cover for a succulent garden if you're willing to live with that. Now, mind you, I love the Ruth Bancroft garden itself, but I also know it's an unrealistic presentation of succulents. I'm sorry, it is. If you were to go in the desert, the desert has a lot of deciduous plants and other soft plants that are not succulents. In fact, they're the predominant flora of the desert, and they protect the succulents. The succulents need that, and that's what that bothers me. That's what's bothering me about what we're doing with succulents, because it's all about the art and it's not about its environment that it wants to be in.
Yeah, there's different endpoints that people are going for.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I get it, but that's not necessarily what the succulents want. This is where the paper whites are still now at their peak. I have other bulbs in here, including Scylla peruviana. This is what the garden looks like. If you saw it in the summer, it does not look like this at all. You'd be surprised it's the same garden, because I've got it worked out now where the succulents come up and then they go dormant and the other stuff comes up. It's
Let me
really
know when
great.
you want to do it Sunday in the garden.
I would need help at this point with all the entertainment.
Oh, Aristolochia.
You know. Sal, are you still on?
Oh, I'm here.
I love it.
You provided one of the Aristolochias.
Yeah, I took a picture of the Aristolochia in bloom.
And is that in your garden, or where is that at?
I think that's actually at UC Botanical Garden, but I also have it at home. But there seems like there's a lot of flowers this year, just really dense.
That is amazing. Yours are pink. I went to the ones on the left are mine from Fernandez Ranch in Franklin Canyon, and they're a little bit more yellowish. I'm not
Really
sure
beautiful.
what the difference is. Bart, do you know why one would be maybe different sun exposure? They're both Californica, I would assume.
Yeah, but they're just a lot of variation in flower color.
Oh, okay.
There's even a name variety, something like it's lemon something, like lemon peel or something like that. But yeah, they're just very variable. And you have two, or in that slide, I mean, the one on the right is particularly rich and the one on the left is particularly pale. But again, it's just natural variation. And it's why I've always enjoyed working with California native plants, because all the genetic diversity is here. And so you can go and look around and look for darker ones or paler ones or albino ones, and they're all just out there to be found.
Oh, neat. Well, I always looking for this one at the Fernandez Ranch. I always look at it when I'm coming down the hill.
Where's Fernandez Ranch?
It's by where Franklin Canyon golf course is. There's a in the back on Highway 4. If you have to, if you're going toward Pinole, you have to make a U-turn and come back, and then there's Christie Road on the right before the railroad track overpass, and it goes back, and beautiful hiking trails up there. And this is on a north-facing slope, and I always can forget when it blooms, but it blooms right before the leaves come out.
Yeah, and it's always in winter. And the other real odd thing is that we are at the southern point of natural distribution of this plant. The further south it goes to the west of us is San Bruno Mountain. And then here it's sort of follows 680 corridor and pops up several places. It's here naturally at Point Richmond. It's also in Benicia, but it's very spotty down here because we are the southern range of this plant, or the southern natural range of this plant.
Having the same experience where my plant is also very heavily flowering right now. It is literally covered with blooms. So it's pretty exciting. If it fruits as heavily as it has flowered, it's gonna pull the trellis down.
I don't know. Wow. What does the fruit look like? I've seen the dried up flowers, but I don't know if I've ever seen it. The fruit.
The fruit
kind of like a small pear.
Oh
No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Well, and they're fluted.
They look
and,
more like a star fruit.
well,
That's
yeah,
true.
and
Yeah.
then they open, and they're kind of hand-like, or almost Buddha citrus, Buddha hand citrus,
Okay, yep.
when they open, and that it's one of the unusually distributed fruits in that it's yellow jackets that visit them, and when the flowers open, when the fruits open, they're powerfully aromatic. They smell like kiwi fruit, and the wasps are attracted. If there's one open and you don't smell it, you'll just see a bunch of wasps are around, and then just watch them, and they will go to the fruit. They'll pick out a seed with the a lysome on it, and then they'll fly away with it.
We'll have to look for that. That sounds exciting, actually.
Yeah, it's a very unusual thing. There aren't that many that are plants that have their seeds distributed by yellow jackets.
Calicanthus is another.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, and both of them are very, not exactly primitive, but ancient plants. One of the earlier forks. And again, they're well, just even looking at Aristolochia, there's not other flowers that really have that form. The other thing is that ours at the Botanic Garden, because we're much colder, they're not flowering at all yet. There are some buds which look just like the mature flowers. They're just miniature. But I was looking at them, and there were a couple of them that were like a 1/4 inch. But again, they're still quite a ways off, and there probably will be a lot of them. The other thing is that the pipevine swallowtail butterflies usually lay their eggs on the young stems, and then the caterpillars or first instar will eat that and go down to leaves. And if there are a whole bunch of them, they can totally defoliate a plant and even eat most of the older stems.
And then Sal, you had a interesting statistic about the pollination, which I wasn't aware of.
Oh yeah, pollinated by fungus gnats. Apparently the flowers kind of smell fungusy. I don't know. They look more like meat to me than fungus. But the fungus gnats are attracted to them and fly in looking for something yummy. And of course, what they want isn't there. And then they try to get out. And what's interesting, if you look at the inside of a flower, it's mostly maroon, but the very top where it's attached to the stem, it's very light colored. And they fly to the top up there trying to get out, thinking that that's their exit. And it's not. What's up there is the anthers. And they get covered in pollen, and they just keep batting themselves against the top of the plant until they get totally tired out. So what I've read about this pollination is that the flower wilts and then the gnats escape. But in my experience, the flower maintains completely the same shape. So I don't see how its wilting would allow the gnat to escape. So my theory is that the gnat gets tired out, falls down into the bottom, and then actually sees the sunlight through the opening in the flower, and finally is able to get out and then go through the whole thing in another flower in order to pollinate it.
Yeah, it'd have to escape to do its job, right?
Yeah, it has to do
Way
its
to make a
job,
living.
so it has to be deceived at least twice.
That's a great story. Every time I've torn open one of the flowers, it's been full of flies.
Yes, exactly. And that was what I was just going to say, is that even though they produce hundreds of flowers, they don't produce very many fruits as a general rule. And that it is that many of the insects that get in there do not get out. I think it's just kind of more like chance that if you fell down to the bottom because you were exhausted, you might end up going to the right and get out instead of going to the left. You know, I think it's more chance than anything.
Not a very successful strategy there from that flower.
Well, it's successful enough because the
Evidently.
plant is still here and it's quite an ancient lineage.
Interesting. It was trying out the strategies, I think, in that time frame, in that lineage, right?
Yeah.
Do they make new use of the nutrients of the bugs that decay in there? Or is it like one of those carnivorous kind of things?
No, I don't
No,
think so.
other than what it will do, I mean, all those flowers drop off and then kind of add to the mulch under the plant. So in that regard, yes. I mean, rather than just having the insects fly off and never be seen again, but it's not that they're actually digesting them like most carnivorous plants do.
Missed an opportunity there.
Yep. Perhaps it'll evolve that way over more time.
We haven't talked about the butterfly that much, but the
Go
main
for it.
reason I planted this plant was for the butterfly, and the caterpillars are gorgeous and the butterfly is gorgeous. So it's a great host plant.
Does
Are
the
you getting
butterfly
them? Are you
lay
getting a lot of butterflies?
I see butterflies occasionally. I think we don't really have enough of the host plant of the Aristolochia in my neighborhood to create habitat. So I'm always trying to convince people to plant it.
Where are you with that? Which neighborhood?
Oh, I'm near Alta Bates in Berkeley.
Well, there are a number of them that have been planted in Berkeley. I don't think the plant was ever in Berkeley proper. Again, I do know they're native out here at Point Richmond, and occasionally they will fly through my garden, and I have that weedy Aristolochia that some people really like. I did not plant it. And they come and lay eggs on it. But
Weedy
I'm
one?
not. Oh yeah, that horrible one has the really Fimbriata. Yeah, it's got interesting leaves and very interesting flowers, but it is a weed, and I haven't been able to get rid of it entirely.
So
And
not
then-
native.
Right, not native. And that, yeah, this is the only native one.
Mhm.
And that I am assuming that it has similar compounds that will attract the butterfly. Whether they can mature on another species, I don't know. But I do know that at the Botanic Garden, we have scads of caterpillars and dozens of butterflies. And they stick around because there are at least 4 or 5 different collections of Aristolochia in the Botanic Garden.
Is this the regional parks you're speaking of?
Yeah, in Tilden. And that I know that the city of San Francisco had eliminated all of their plants by development, and now they've been restoring them in some places, but they were not getting any butterflies, and so we signed an agreement with them and some lepidopterists that were keeping track of things, and that they came and harvested small numbers of our caterpillars and moved them over there, and they have taken. And I know that a couple of people in Berkeley had done the same thing without telling us before they did it, and that now the butterflies return and breed there. But there has to be enough plants there, or the plant has to be big enough to support them, because the caterpillars are voracious. And as Sal mentioned, they're quite beautiful. They're black and orange, and they're poisonous. So birds usually totally leave them and the butterfly alone.
My neighbor planted one, and last year there was a pipe vine swallowtail across the street about 3/4 of the way down the block. And I don't understand why that butterfly was there.
Did you give it directions?
Well, I think that the butterflies are probably very sensitive to some chemical that they can read from the plant, because they seem to find them wherever they are, as long as they're in an area where the butterfly already is. And that I'm not sure what the nearest population is to Tilden Park, but I don't believe anyone ever brought them to the garden. And again, in some years, I know that on one of our plant sale days, which is, the middle of April on a Saturday, there were probably at least 50 adults flying around that day several
Wow.
years ago.
Wow.
And that they particularly like purple flowers. And what they were on that day, though, were all Lonicera involucrata, which has sort of yellowish red flowers, but they were all over that plant that day.
Thank you, Sal, for sharing those. So this is my, I think mine's tricolor. At least I think I bought it as tricolor. Judy's looked like more darker on the bottom. Her Lachenalia.
Yeah, and yours just looks like it has 3 colors, not 4.
Yeah. So I think it is tricolor. Okay. And so this is one spot in my garden with the Dudleya and the Euphorbia mercenites, which I really love, and it kind of recedes a little bit, but not too much. And then the Ixia viridifolia or flora. And then I was thinking it might be nice to put the Lachenalia right to the right of the Ixia there. Wouldn't that be nice with the chartreuse
Yeah.
Euphorbia? So that's what I'm thinking. So hopefully it'll grow in the ground, and this doesn't get water in the summertime at all. So that might be a good thing. And then on the right, I have Euphorbia rigida, either on the bottom and behind the Amaryllis belladonna, which I absolutely love that one too, because it has that beautiful silvery foliage with those chartreuse flowers, and it's more of an upright, whereas the mercenites is kind of a low spreader and doesn't get too big in it. And then in the foreground there is aloe safari sunrise, which has been a really great bloomer, and I've had that for probably about 6 or 7 years.
Nice.
That's what's going on in my garden.
I had a comment about the Euphorbia rigida. When we were in Sicily on a Mediterranean Garden Society tour, we went up La Madonnea, which is the other mountain in Sicily that's not a volcano. And that's where this plant is native. And we saw these very curious caterpillars. We were just talking about caterpillars. Munching away on the stems and the leaves, and we thought that was quite strange, since they're so, that milky, sappy stuff. And the botanist there told us, oh no, that makes them unpalatable to the local birds. So they're using a similar, another interesting strategy to kind of keep the birds away and keep them from being predated and stuff like that. But I just couldn't imagine anything feasting on those, on that horrible sap that
Right.
are in the
Well, that's
Euphorbias.
what monarchs do too. They eat the milkweed, which has milky juice. That's why it's called milkweed. Same latex.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Good
That's
point.
true.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, but I'd never heard that before. And they were quite striking on the mountain. They took, very rough and ready spot, and the Euphorbias just loved it. They just grew like crazy.
Which one was that?
The rigida,
Oh, the
Euphorbia
rigida.
rigida.
Yeah, I think that's really a striking plant with it.
And and in the winter they turned, you could still see some that were already starting to turn red in the colder weather, because they were way up on the mountaintop and stuff.
Oh, the foliage you're talking about?
The flowers, mostly the aging
Oh.
flowers, would turn this really bright red.
Oh, interesting.
The mercenites is a problem reseeder.
I haven't found it a problem where I'm at. It does reseed, but I kind of like it, but it doesn't reseed a lot for me. Some of those other upright ones certainly are, but rigida and has reseeded a little bit too, but not as much as, I don't remember which.
Mercenides has receded more for me than rigida.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I lost our rigida. I'd love to get some back.
Yeah, and I know that Mercenides can be very weedy and come up in abundance.
Well, I didn't plant that one, I'll put it that way, but I like where it's at.
I think they eventually calmed down, though. They were abundant in my succulent garden, but now I don't have that many anymore. I still have a couple, and I kind of got sad because they are not as abundant.
They're easy to pick out too, but I haven't had them overly so.
And Kristen, in your garden, they're probably smothered by the winter oxalis when they're coming up.
That may be, but that's a good thing, right?
Yep, overall.
Yeah.
Oh, and then this thing is always a big show. Okay, so this is Acacia bormanii. Of course, all sorts of acacias are blooming right now. This one I saw originally in Flora Grub. She has that ice cream cone container planter, cement planter, and it was in that. And it kind of has a dark reddish bark. Looks brown here, but it's can be kind of a reddish color, which is a nice contrast with the light sagey green feathery kind of foliage. And then it becomes a cloud of gold at this time of year.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
It likes to be a shrub though. It does. Well, you can see in that middle picture right here, it's got suckers coming up. But
you grow it as a multi-stem little tree, right?
yeah. And it wants to really go out. I mean, it tends to be a little bit low. You have to kind of duck over onto the over here. And I keep trimming it to the upright ones, but yeah.
And that's what it wants to be.
Yeah.
Do you get seedlings of it coming up or not?
I have not had any seedlings. They're all coming up from the root, suckers from the roots, but no seedlings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Well, Ellen, what's that white towering thing on the right picture? Like in front, yeah.
That's my column. Do you think I should paint it? I was debating.
Oh, it's beautiful. Did you make it yourself? What is it?
That is, yes, that is, what do they call it? Dargit, which is cement and has, I think it's Portland cement, ash, newspaper. I know it's all sorts of recycled stuff. And it's from Australia, but it's a cementatious kind of thing that you can kind of mold and stuff.
Nice.
It has a Rosselli on the top, so it's supposed to look like a fireworks coming out the top when it blooms.
Sure.
Oh yeah, I see.
Okay, Bart O'Brien, you're on.
Okay, well, this is that Luculia that I've brought in many times, but usually I bring it in November. This year, it's incredibly late. It didn't really open anything until the end of January this year. And I have no idea why. I haven't done anything different to it. And it's having a very, very good year. I mean, it's flowering profusely and it still has lots of buds on it. So it's going to go for quite a while.
How far away do you have to be before you start smelling it?
It's one of those things that if you smell it too much, you it kind of doesn't register for a while. So I don't smell it unless I really put my nose in it now, because again, it's been in bloom so long. And usually I do have a good nose for floral scents, but also kind of like with Boronia megastigma, once you smell it heavily for a couple of days, it just kind of doesn't register unless you really put your nose in it until the next year, or that's what I find. But The other nice thing about the loculias is that, as you can see on this one, the older leaves turn either orange or red before dropping off, and that it does lose a lot of leaves shortly after blooming, and then all the new growth happens. This is just in a very large pot, and it's been in a large pot for a long time. And that's my garage that it's next to.
Would it become a more upright tree if it were in the ground?
Probably. I mean, I'm familiar with a bunch of them, or not a bunch, but a number of them in different locations, and that, yeah, most of them are upright, fairly narrow, somewhat open, large shrubs, small trees. They can flower at very different times of the year and have different degrees of fragrance and different flower sizes. This one, again, I've brought it in many times. It has very large flowers that have extra tissue toward the center of the flower. So they're very thick and almost waxy. They last a long time.
The
They're
leaves
also
look bigger too.
What?
The leaves look larger than I'm used to seeing. It almost looks like a rhodie or something tropical.
Yeah, well, it almost does. But it's a loculia, so it's one of those Bay Area specials.
Yep.
We're one of the only places in the world outside of the mid-elevation Himalaya where you can grow these.
Nice.
Takes pruning really well. You can cut it back really hard and it will regenerate and fill up pretty easily.
Good to know. And yeah, I've grown a number of these from cuttings now that I have in pots coming along. Eventually I'll bring in at least a couple of them to the Hort for a raffle, whatever. And then on the left is a manzanita that I've been growing for many years, both in Southern California, and then I brought it up here. This is Arctostaphylos australis. It is a very rare species from northwestern Baja California, from the California Floristic Province portion of northwestern Baja. It's a coastal species, usually found within a mile or two from the coast. So it's used to more humidity than many of the typical Southern California manzanitas. And it has especially clean foliage. It's blue-gray, and that, as you can see, this particular form with the mid-pink flowers, I named and introduced at our plant sale last fall as La Favorita. It is definitely one of my all-time favorite manzanitas, yes. And I've named many manzanita cultivars. This is one of my very favorites.
Pretty flowers.
Mine
Yeah,
too
well,
now.
and good foliage. I mean, this has sort of the same or similar color to Arctostaphylos glauca foliage, but it tends to be a lot more disease-free
And
and
the
very free flowering.
stems look pretty nice too. Will it get very large?
The biggest ones that I've seen in the wild were about 5 feet. And then at Rancho Santa Ana, which again, I collected some of these very early on, and they've been in the ground for about 15, 20 years down there now. They're up to around 5 feet or so. They tend to be a little bit wider than they are tall for the most part, although in the wild, they co-occur with Tecate cypress in some locations, and they're kind of very upright, trying to keep pace with the cypresses. Where they're in coastal scrub, they're just low upright shrubs to about 4 feet. I expect with great age in cultivation, they'll probably reach 6 feet.
How much heat can they take? Because Rancho Santa Ana is not that close to the ocean.
No, well, and again, they did very, very well there. And they were out in the plant communities where they got almost no care and no summer watering of any consequence. So it seems to be a very adaptable one. And I was surprised that they're doing this well up here,
Nice.
but
Can they be
pleasantly surprised.
propagated from cuttings?
Yeah, that one's just from cuttings. There are white ones, pale pink ones. This is kind of the best pink one.
That is a deep pink for a manzanita, I'd say.
Yeah,
You-
it's
are
a
they-
reliable pink every year.
Bart, I just wanted to know, are those reddish stems on it?
Yes, it has the smooth red brown manzanita bark.
I find that so attractive, that shrub. I mean, with the gray green leaves and the bright pink blooms, I just love it. But I can't
Yeah.
grow it up here. Ugh.
Yeah,
Sure
you
can.
can
Sue
grow it
wants
up
one.
here though. Or where are you
She's in
exactly?
Oregon.
Oh, you might try it. I know that I think it might be up there limitedly, but
Are you selling it at Tilden?
yeah, we sold a bunch of them last fall when I named and introduced it
Oh, okay.
at the plant sale. And I have a bunch more in propagation right now for later this year. I have gotten into a number of Oxalis lately. I guess part of it is just in recognition of that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get rid of the pest capres. And so I'm growing all these nicer little collectible ones in small pots up on tables where the pest capre can't get them. Virtually all of these, or almost all of these in these images, are all Oxalis obtusa cultivars. It's very variable in South Africa. One of the things that's distinctive about it is that, as you can see from most of those, the center is bright yellow and it's surrounded by a little bit darker tone of the rest of the petal right around that yellow center. The leaves can be incredibly variable, from glabrous to hairy to gray green to bright green. I mean, and that when you see pictures of these in the wild, it's sprinklings of all the different colors together. Usually it's not one color predominates, and that so each one of these cultivars is in a different pot, and their pots are 4-inch pots. The one with the really big flowers that's in the middle is raspberry. That one is one of the biggest flowers, although there is a bigger one called Sunshine that's kind of a salmony orange that I didn't send Ellen one of it. Cranberry, which is another one in that same sort of color range as I was describing, but it's actually, the petals are a bit smaller and not as overlapping as they are on raspberry, and the flowers are a bit smaller too. Elizabeth, the yellow one, has really big flowers. Those are about, the size of a 50-cent piece. I mean, they're big flowers on Elizabeth. So anyway, I'm growing probably about 30 or so different ones of these, and they are quite different from one another. It's not that they all look alike.
They're all named varieties then?
Yeah.
Where did you get them, Bart?
I got them on Etsy.
No
Really?
kidding.
Yeah. I
Probably
found
from
them
Sea-
a couple of years ago, and I ordered a few, and they arrived, and I potted them up, and they all flowered. So I got more, and then I got more.
Are they bulbs?
Yes, they're little tiny bulbs that are highly sculptured. they're very unusual, but they're really tiny. They're about maybe 1/8 of an inch thick and about, maybe a little, they're kind of teardrop shaped. And like many Oxalis, you really don't know what the top or the bottom is. So I usually just put them in sideways.
So I've been playing with Oxalis too, Bart, and I have to say, I like to have pots with color in them for winter, and Oxalis is a great solution for that.
Yeah, I've had different ones, and I have a lot of other different species that I've had longer than these obtusas, except one of the obtusas I've had probably for over 20 years. And it's one of the very best ones. I got it unnamed in Southern California many, many years ago. And I always make sure that they're in pots up on tables or on concrete so that they can't escape. I have the feeling they would if they could. The earliest ones started blooming in late October. And so I have some that are already even obtusas that are long gone. And then these others that are just hitting full bloom now, like these.
And have they ever seeded out on you in other pots?
I didn't think so until this year. And I'm not sure what happened. I had these pots with my really old collection of bulbs that had never flowered before, and they flowered this year because of all the rain. It kind of rejuvenated a whole bunch of these old pots of old bulbs, and that these Oxalis that had never bloomed ended up blooming, and they were different obtusas. So I'm not sure if I had them as unknown Oxalis, because there were something I've had for years and years and years, and the labels had disappeared.
And so do you divide them?
I never have divided any of them, although that one pot that I've had in a gallon, the same gallon can for, like I said, over 20 years, it comes out the drainage holes, it bubbles out the top of the pot, even though the soil's cooked down. I mean, they are indestructible, because I would have it in full sun on concrete in my backyard in Upland, which is far inland eastern LA County, just before, at my house was actually San Bernardino County, the westernmost city in San Bernardino County. And it got hot every year. And being on concrete, which absorbs heat and gives it off, and in a black plastic pot, I couldn't believe that it could take all that. And it just got more and more of it every year. I'll send a picture of it in for next time, because this year it is in flower right now. It's just amazing. All of them are a little bit bigger and a little bit looser flower this year. I think from the rain. You can see that definitely in the mixed photo on the left. Some of those in the background are getting kind of tall, which they never have done.
They're beautiful.
And easy. I don't water them at all during the summer.
Nice.
How long do they those bloom for you? Some started in October. How long will it go?
Different ones I would say one of the things that I've definitely noticed this year is that every year that I can remember, except this year, we've always had 1 week of hot weather in January that either moves everything along or causes all kinds of exuberant growth. But this year we haven't. So everything is just kind of meandering along, and a lot of things are still small. but a lot of things got bigger because we had so much rain. So I'm answering that question sort of hard because in a normal year when we get a week of real hot weather, if I don't give them some water that week, sometimes they're over. If I water them and then it gets cool again, they'll just keep going. Normally, almost every pot goes for over a month.
Do you not water them in the summertime? You stop watering?
I don't water them at all in the summer.
Thank you.
Never. And I
got
only
plants.
water them if it's very dry in the winter. I think I watered them in November, maybe once, because they were all coming up and some of them were flowering and it was so dry.
I'll have to get our hands on some of those. Okay,
Me too.
now you're on, Mark.
Okay, so this is that Bobby Fireman had to take this out of a client's garden and offered it to me. So I said, yes, of course. And my wife loves Japanese maples and we're both loving this one. This is afternoon light, so it's
Beautiful.
I know, doesn't it
Yeah,
look like a fall
very.
thing instead of spring? And those leaves are itty bitty.
This is
Oh,
now just leafing out.
Yes, it's been since somewhere in January. Yeah,
Wow,
Wow.
beautiful.
it's nearly fully leafed out now.
Wow.
Beautiful.
How long do the leaves stay on?
Oh, well, I'm going to find out. This is my first, it came to me with a bunch of dead leaves on it and a lot of bare stems. And it's been in a big moving pot for a while outside the ground. So it's just now reestablishing, but I'm going to find out.
When did you plant it?
God, I'm not remembering clearly now. I think
This winter or
late fall, early winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I also like those bright red flowers on it too.
I know. I wanted to make sure to get a little picture of that. I mean, they're not huge, of course, but kind of sweet, huh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really pretty.
Well, it just sort of accents that reddish leaf margin as well. It's just very, very simpatico.
Yes. And it's Katsura, which I didn't know anything about. And then that's the next one is the Sanchez palmensis. And I just was sitting on one of those rocks under the birch
Great.
trees, looking up and noticing. I mean, this is what I like seeing from underneath the birches anyway. But looking straight up, it's they're like little palm trees, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
little umbrellas.
And then that the one of the in the upper middle is this year's flowers beginning to develop. And then I put in the other two just to show. I mean, those flowers really are dandelion flowers, and the seed heads are dandelion seed heads. And now, yes, they are coming up. They get around pretty good now. I used to say, oh, I only wish they would seed. Now I kind of wish they would knock it off.
Yeah.
They're so pretty. I love them.
Yours with the buds, mine are about like that right now too. And I was thinking yours were in full bloom, and I was gonna say, boy, mine are slow.
No.
I guess it's the same everywhere.
Yeah, I think so.
But yours are glorious. That photo on the left is amazing.
I like that too. That's what I mostly wanted to share. It's all about the foliage. I mean, and then of course, by summer it'll be all crisp and look, like awful. It looks awful everywhere. But I do find underneath these birches, they get a little shade relief. I mean, right now they're open to the sky and getting all the sun while they need it, and then later they'll be a little bit protected by the leaf from the tree, but not forever. It'll still look ratty.
Well, and that the other thing they really remind me of looking up at is tree ferns.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
More than palms.
Right. Yes, right, exactly. That's right. I agree with you. And then this is my my acacia. I think it's the only one I'm growing. Cognata, cousin, its parent. This is a moderately sized one. It's in a bottomless large pot. but you can see the kind of the roots spreading out underneath the gravel. But it's just, I kind of like the foliage. I mean, if I didn't cut it up, it would be all the way down to the ground, all around it. So it's sort of like however much clearance I feel like, I mean, sometimes I'll sculpt tunnels through it, it's all within reach. I don't have to get on a ladder, so I don't resent it too much, but sometimes the branches will reach out further. Sometimes they'll go all the way to that little raised wall on that raised planter. And then, so the picture in the middle is from another year. Oh, and the one on the right is from another year. The one on the left is this year. I just didn't get particularly good photos of the flowers like in the middle one or of the tree, the habit of the tree. And even that on the right doesn't show it that well.
Kind of reminiscent of a small weeping willow. Everybody loves that.
I agree. Yeah.
Look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does feel like that.
Okay, so let's see if we can get Nancy's in here. This is your hawthorn, right?
No, it's not a hawthorn.
Oh, there's your
It's
Perodia.
Perodia persica.
Hmm.
It's pot bound in a 5-gallon can. It's about 15 feet tall. Well, maybe not quite that tall. But I suddenly looked up and it was blooming. I've never seen it look quite that gorgeous. It's only bloomed a few times for me, but it just looks spectacular. That was January 31st, I think.
Beautiful color. How old is it? They're not very fast growing anyway, are they?
I don't think so. I've had it in the can for, it's the last of the ones that didn't sell. Probably 15 years.
Oh, okay. So it's got some age to it.
Yeah. After seeing Dick Dunmeyer's in his garden, I really wanted to plant it, but I don't have a really good spot for it.
What does it want?
Well, it wanted more space than where I thought I was going to put it.
Okay.
Because I still was going to have to drive past that area. And it was going to be low and, more spreading rather than super upright.
I think that it really varies with the speed, because I had 3 or 4 of them that were in the ground at my house in Upland, and they grew quickly, even in that hot climate. They were on the north side of my garage, and they were all seedling ones, and so they had different fall color. 2 of them were really boring and were kind of but then one was sort of yellow orange and the other one was red. I didn't live in that house all that long, and they probably were over 15 feet tall when I left. I know that there are some old ones, or probably from about 1985, 86, from Betsy Klepsha's garden, that are only now getting up to being about 12 feet tall. So they can be slower or faster, just depending upon conditions.
You don't see them very often, for sure.
No, but good ones are outstanding for fall color. And the leaves are kind of broad ovals and a little bit wavy. I mean, it's really a very nice plant.
I couldn't hear the name of this.
Perodia persica.
If you think of it as parrot, and parrots are known for garish color, or some are, that's how I always relate to that name. And the fall color, because again, usually it is recommended for fall color.
Yeah, the first one I ever saw in the fall, there was yellows, pinks, and oranges all on the leaves. They were just spectacular.
Did yours have nice color then, Nancy?
Not as special.
That's why it was left. Poor little orphan.
The one on the left is just something that was a happenstance. I was trying to get a sprayer going, and the first one would no longer pump up, and so I pulled out another one, and it was clogged, and I didn't want to walk all the way up to the house to get a piece of wire to try to clean the nozzle. And I had a Washington hawthorn that was just right there, and I thought, well, this will work just fine, and it did.
You'll have to cut it off and thread it next time. You can use it for a needle.
Needle, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it just tickled me, so I thought I took a picture, and then I was sending pictures to Ellen, so I thought, oh, I'll send her this one too.
Thank you for sharing all those. Okay, so just a few little announcements, short and sweet. We're interested in your ideas, any input, ideas on, or if you want to show your garden at a Sunday in the Garden, that's always a wonderful event that everybody loves, going to see the other people's gardens all at the same time and walk through it and then experience it rather than just seeing it. Or if you have ideas for speakers, we'd love to have that. Email calhortinfo@gmail.com. And then evidently we have till the end of February to order seeds. If you want any of that, that's on the February bulletin. You pay $5, send it to Dave Tivell, and then I think by the end of March, I think he mails them out. And then, as I mentioned, a little teaser earlier, Saxon Holt is going to have a coffee in the garden. If you don't know what a coffee in the garden is Sunday mornings, usually about 10-ish. Cal Hort brings coffee and napkins, I guess cups
And
too.
treats. Yeah,
Well,
we
everybody
bring
else brings treats to go along with it. Mark, you usually do that. Do you have anything else to add to the coffee in the garden?
Well, yeah, the culture is usually that we pick up the coffee, and everyone who attends brings a little something on the side if they can. If they don't, there's usually enough to go around. It's okay.
Yeah.
There's always enough to go around, yeah.
And then we'll try to get maybe an afternoon, something, maybe go up to,
Sonoma Botanic Garden.
we'll see if we can maybe arrange something like that, or you obviously can do that on your own as well. And then again, if you have any ideas or subjects that you want to hear about, let us know so we can maybe get someone to speak on that.
One other announcement for anyone that's going to be going south. The deserts, particularly the Colorado desert, is looking extremely good right now. They've had weather similar to us. They haven't had any warm weather. They've only had since fall one Santa Ana event, and it was weak, and it didn't dry out anything. And so the desert plants are enormous. Some of the abronias, the Samverbenas and Enotheras, the desert evening primroses are huge, some of the biggest ones ever. And that some of those canyons on the peninsular range down at the desert end are already in good bloom. I was talking with John Redman. He's the botanist with San Diego Natural History Museum. He said he just was in one of those canyons and collected over 50 different taxa just in a couple of hours in flower. And that it looks like things are going to be good for quite a while.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's inland San Diego and Imperial counties that are looking spectacular now. The Mojave, it's still too early, but it's very green.
Bart, have you seen
No, it was in conversation with John Redman from the San Diego Natural History Museum, who's been out there. I know that you can go online and see a bunch of good photos right now too.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you all
Thank
for
you,
those that you contributed. Night, everybody.